This story is titled, My Sister Said That I Stole Her Money from the Wedding, and now the whole family hates me. Days later, I came to the family dinner, showed video proof, and shocked everyone. Hi everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and make sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. What's up guys? I've been holding on to this for a while, and honestly, I'm still not sure how everything went so sideways. Let me back it up and start where this all began. My sister Mallory's wedding. It was a big deal. My parents practically bent over backward to make it the kind of event people would talk about for years. Mallory and Chase, her now husband, were on cloud nine. I'm not super close with Mallory, but I showed up, dressed sharp, smiled for the pictures, and stayed out of the way. That's just how I am. Low drama, keep it simple. The wedding itself went off without a hitch. Beautiful venue, expensive everything, and everyone was saying how perfect Mallory looked. I figured we were all getting along for once. The reception was wild in the best way. People danced, laughed, and made those cringy but sweet speeches that everyone secretly loves. Nothing felt off. No weird vibes. No signs of what was coming. If someone told me that night my family would blow up in less than 24 hours, I would have laughed in their face. The next day, we all met up at my parents' place for a chill hangout. Post-wedding decompression, you know? Mom was on a high, replaying every detail of the day like she was narrating a wedding documentary. Dad was making jokes about how much it all cost, while Chase was quietly enjoying the praise for being such a great match for Mallory. I was just there for the food, and to listen to the usual family banter. We were rehearsing funny dance floor moments, and my uncle's terrible dad jokes, when Mallory stood up abruptly. It wasn't weird at first. I figured she was about to make some cute thank you speech. Maybe gush over Chase again. That's her thing, making sure all the attention stays on her. But to my surprise, she announced, Jordan stole our honeymoon money. It's gone. $15,000. I didn't even understand what she said at first. I was waiting for her to laugh off the joke, but she was serious. I blinked, looking at her like she'd just spoken another language. Did she just say I stole 15 grand? From where? When? I couldn't wrap my head around it. Before I could even ask, she started laying it out. I counted it before the wedding, she said, looking straight at my parents. We had it in a safe place and now it's missing. Jordan was the only one who could have taken it. He's been acting jealous ever since I got engaged. You've all seen it. Jealous? Acting out? What the hell was she even talking about? I sat there, dumbfounded, as she kept going. I didn't want to believe it either, but there's no other explanation. He had plenty of chances to sneak into our room while we were busy. Chase and I trusted him, and he bet-dated us. I finally found my voice. What? Are you serious right now? I didn't take anything. I looked at my parents, hoping they'd step in, but they were already nodding along like this made perfect sense. Mallory, I don't even know where you kept the money. I didn't go near your room all night, I said, trying to keep calm, but my heart was racing. $15,000? Do you know how insane that sounds? But she didn't back off. You expect me to believe that? You were lurking around the hotel the whole time. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. Lurking? I was literally at the front desk half the night, helping my cousin figure out his room situation. I had people around me the entire time, but apparently that didn't matter. Mallory wasn't letting this go. Mom jumped in. Jordan, this is serious. If you did something, now's the time to own up to it. We can work through it as a family, but you need to tell the truth. Mom, I didn't take anything, I said, frustrated that no one was even considering my side of things. Why would I steal from Mallory? That doesn't even make sense. Mallory answered for me. Because you've always been jealous. Ever since we were kids, you've hated when I got attention. Admit it, Jordan. You couldn't stand seeing me happy, so you decided to ruin it. I was completely thrown off. Jealous? Of what? Mallory, this is insane. I didn't even know you had a honeymoon fund. Dad chimed in, his voice steady but firm. Jordan, we've had enough. If Mallory says it's missing, then it's missing. She has no reason to lie about this. You've let us all down. What the hell, Dad? You're just going to take her word for it? I said, feeling my face get hot. I was literally at the front desk half the night, in full view of everyone. Ask anyone. Chase seemed unsure of my sister's claim. He tried to calm things down. Maybe we should take a minute and think this through. I don't think Jordan would do something like this, he said, but Mallory cut him off. Don't defend him, Chase. Are you seriously taking his side right now? She snapped. You're my husband. Act like it. Chase went quiet, and I realized I was completely alone in this. My parents were siding with Mallory without a second thought, and Chase wasn't going to stick his neck out for me. It didn't matter what I said, or how absurd her story was. She'd already won. Dad stood up, signaling the conversation was over. You need to leave, Jordan. You've done enough damage. The room was suffocating. It felt like the walls were closing in. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear myself think. I tried one last time to reason with them, looking directly at my dad. Seriously? You're kicking me out over this? Without any proof? What the hell is wrong with you guys? I asked, still hoping someone would snap out of it and realize how ridiculous this was. But no one did. Dad's face hardened. He wasn't even looking at me like his son anymore. Jordan, enough. We've heard enough. You've embarrassed this family, and worse, you've hurt your sister on what should have been the happiest day of her life. I'm telling you, I didn't take a damn thing. How can you just decide I'm guilty without even asking questions? I responded. Mallory chimed in, voice dripping with fake hurt. You're the only one who had the chance, Jordan. Stop trying to weasel your way out of it. Dad stepped closer, towering over me now, his voice low and cold. You're no longer our son. I don't have a son who steals from his family. The words hung in the air like smoke choking me. I stared at him, waiting for him to take it back, to say something, anything, that would fix what he'd just said. But he didn't. I looked around the room, desperate for someone to speak up, to stand up for me. Mom? Chase? Even Mallory? But they were silent, and their silence was deafening. Mallory just sat there with this triumphant look, as if she'd finally gotten exactly what she wanted. You know what? I said, my voice shaking. Fine. Believe her lies. All of you. But don't come crawling back when you realize how wrong you are. I grabbed my coat and walked out, slamming the door behind me. My head was spinning. My chest felt like it was going to explode, but one thing was crystal clear. I was done. If they wanted to make me the villain, I'd let them. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Driving home that night felt like a blur. My head was pounding, and I couldn't stop replaying what had just happened. My family, my own parents, had kicked me out over a story Mallory made up. A story that didn't even make sense if anyone thought about it for more than a second. How does someone casually steal $15,000 from a locked room at a crowded wedding? But logic didn't matter. She said it, and they believed it. Then a core memory clicked in my mind. This wasn't just random drama. This was about Grandma. A few months ago, during a family dinner, Grandma had pulled me aside and told me something that caught me completely off guard. She'd decided to leave me most of her inheritance. I remember being stunned. Mallory was the golden child, the favorite, the one who always knew how to charm everyone. But Grandma said she trusted me to use the money wisely, to preserve the family's legacy, whatever that meant. She said I was grounded and responsible, and Mallory was, well, not. Mallory didn't take that news well when she found out. I wasn't supposed to know this, but my mom accidentally let it slip during one of her venting sessions. Apparently, Mallory had been working overtime trying to convince Grandma to change her mind, taking her to fancy lunches, sending flowers, even talking about how she and Chase would use the money to start a family. But Grandma wasn't budging. Mallory was furious, and suddenly all her subtle jabs at me started to make sense. So this accusation, it wasn't about the money. It was about making me look bad. Bad enough that Grandma would second-guess her decision, painting me as a thief who stole from his own family, ruining my reputation and taking Grandma's money. Sounds perfect. Mallory had always been good at playing the victim when it suited her. This was just a bigger, uglier version of the same game she'd been playing since we were kids. By the time I got home, the shock of the accusation had turned into full-blown anger. I sat on my couch, scrolling through the family group chat, which was blowing up. Mallory had wasted no time rallying the troops. I just don't know how Jordan could do this to me, one of her messages said. We've always tried to include him, even though he's so distant. And this is how he repays us? The replies were all the same. So sorry you're going through this, Mal. You're so strong. We're all here for you. It was like watching a group of people cheer on the wrong team. Nobody even bothered to ask for my side. Nobody cared. I threw my phone onto the coffee table. I couldn't let her get away with this. But what could I do? If I just told Grandma what was really going on, it would look like I was making excuses, trying to cover for myself. Mallory had set this up so perfectly, and I hated how well it was working. But I couldn't just let it slide. I had to do something. Staying silent wasn't an option. I was burning up inside, and the anger was getting harder to contain. My mind kicked into overdrive, plotting how to set boundaries with my family once and for all. If they wanted to play dirty, fine. I'm gonna make them an offer they can't refuse. So I remembered something I'd seen months ago. It was one of those moments where you stumble into something you shouldn't have seen and decide to keep it to yourself because it's none of your business. Back in August, I'd gone to a coffee shop in a neighboring town to meet up with a friend. As I walked in, I spotted Mallory in the corner booth. At first, I thought she was with Chase, but then I realized the guy sitting across from her wasn't him. He was younger, a bit scruffy looking, and definitely not someone I recognized. They weren't exactly trying to hide what was going on. They were holding hands, laughing, leaning in close. At one point, he even kissed her hand like they were in some cheesy romance movie. I remember thinking, wow, this is bold. What if Chase finds out? But I didn't say anything. It wasn't my place, and frankly, I didn't want to get involved in Mallory's mess. Now though, that mess was my only business. If Mallory wanted to paint me as the family's black sheep, I wasn't going to just sit there and take it. But I needed proof, something undeniable that would show everyone who she really was. And I already knew where to start. In the middle of all this chaos, I got a call from Grandma. I figured she heard what happened lately. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, like she'd been stewing over something. "Jordan," she said, "I heard about the accusations Mallory's been throwing around." I froze for a second, bracing for the worst. "But let me tell you this," she continued. "I don't believe it for a second. I know you, and I know you wouldn't do something so cruel. Mallory's always been dramatic, and I'm starting to think she's hiding something herself." Her words hit me like a lifeline. Grandma had always been the sharpest one in the family, and hearing her say she trusted me gave me a boost of confidence I desperately needed. "Don't worry, Jordan," she added. "The truth has a way of coming out. Just make sure you're ready when it does." With that, she hung up, leaving me more determined than ever to uncover the lies and set things straight. Over the next couple of days, I put a plan together. Mallory had a routine so predictable it was almost laughable. Every Thursday, like clockwork, she'd say she was meeting with a friend. It didn't take a genius to realize these so-called errands conveniently lasted a few hours, starting right around 7 p.m. Chase, the overly trusting guy that he was, never batted an eye. He just waved her off without a second thought. But if I was right, and she was still sneaking off to see coffee shop guy, this would be my chance to catch her red-handed. Thursday evening rolled around, and I parked my car a few houses down from hers, trying to stay inconspicuous. The waiting part was brutal. Every car that passed made me flinch, and I kept second-guessing if I was even doing the right thing. Spying on my own sister? It felt wrong, but so did being framed as the family thief. Desperate times, desperate measures. At exactly 6:45 p.m., her porch light flicked on, and my pulse kicked into overdrive. I ducked down as Mallory strolled out in her usual casual but cute outfit, the kind that screamed she was meeting someone, not picking up groceries. She glanced around quickly, got in her car, and backed out of the driveway. I gave her a head start and then followed, keeping my distance like I'd seen in those crime shows. She drove straight to the same coffee shop I'd seen her at before. I parked discreetly across the street and watched as she pulled into the lot. The same guy was waiting for her by the entrance. She got out of her car and they hugged. Then they kissed. The kind of kiss that would have made Chase throw up. Not a quick, friendly peck. This was full-on PDA. I pulled out my phone and started recording. If Mallory wanted to ruin my reputation, I wasn't about to play nice anymore. They went inside and I stayed put, recording every move they made through the shop's big front window. They grabbed a table in the corner and settled in like it was date night. He kept leaning in close, touching her arm, whispering things that made her laugh. She wasn't acting like someone who just married the love of her life. After about 30 minutes, they left the shop, hugged again in the parking lot, and got into their separate cars. I waited until they were long gone before driving home, my heart racing the entire way. Not because I was nervous, but because I finally had something to fight back with. I spent the rest of the night reviewing the footage, making sure everything was clear and undeniable. The video was gold. It showed everything. Her car, her face, the guy, the kisses, the whole happy couple vibe. It was exactly what I needed, but I wasn't going to rush this. Mallory had blindsided me in front of the family, so it was only fair I returned the favor in the same way. I'd wait for the perfect moment, and when it came, there'd be no denying who the real villain was. While I waited for the perfect moment to blow up everything, and after piecing together Mallory's Thursday night routine, I realized I needed more than just the coffee shop recordings. If I wanted to blow the lid off her lies, I needed to uncover the full extent of what she was doing. The coffee shop dates were damning, but something told me that wasn't the whole story. Mallory wasn't the type to keep things simple. I started digging deeper into her habits. I'd noticed over the years that she often disappeared on weekends too, claiming she had shopping to do or plans with friends. These little gaps in her schedule used to seem normal. Now, with everything I knew, they stuck out like a sore thumb. I decided to follow her the next time she claimed she had errands to run. The first opportunity came that Saturday. Around noon, Mallory left her house wearing casual clothes. She got in her car and drove off, and I followed her from a safe distance. She headed to a shopping plaza a few towns over and parked near a boutique. At first, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe she was just out shopping like she'd said. But she was only inside the boutique for about 10 minutes before coming back out empty-handed. No bags, no purchases, nothing. She got into her car and drove away, and I kept following. This time, she went to an apartment complex on the other side of town. It was small and tucked away. Definitely not somewhere she'd go randomly. She parked her car and walked straight up to one of the units. What threw me off was how casual she was about it. She didn't knock or wait for someone to let her in. She had a key. She unlocked the door like it was her place and disappeared inside. I sat there in my car, staring at the apartment building, trying to process what I'd just seen. Was this where that guy lived? It had to be. There was no other explanation for why she'd have a key to a random apartment. I debated whether to get out and try to get closer, but I didn't want to risk her seeing me. Instead, I documented everything. I took photos of her car parked in front of the building, zoomed in on the apartment number, and noted the timestamp on my phone. I waited for over an hour, watching, but she didn't come back out. Eventually, I left, but something about it didn't sit right. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than I thought, and I was finally starting to uncover the full extent of her lies. The next morning, I couldn't resist going back. I pulled into the same spot across the street, hoping to see if anything else would confirm what I was suspecting. Around 8 a.m., the door to the apartment opened, and sure enough, the guy from the coffee shop stepped out. He stretched, looked around casually, and then hugged Mallory as she stepped out behind him, got into her car, and drove off. Of course I got all of it recorded, and that was enough for me. Now it was showtime. Mallory had gone full scorched earth on me at the family gathering, so it was time to give her a taste of her own medicine. I came up with a plan. A family dinner to apologize and make amends. My parents were still furious, but after a lot of convincing, they reluctantly agreed. Mallory, on the other hand, jumped at the chance. She probably thought it was her moment to double down and drag me even further through the mud. What she didn't know was that this dinner was about to blow her perfect little act to pieces. The days leading up to it were brutal. I kept my head down and stayed silent, even as Mallory kept throwing digs in the family group chat, going on about how some people can't take responsibility for their actions. It was infuriating. She was soaking up the attention, and my parents were eating it up. Every time they sent a message like, "We're so proud of you, Mallory, for handling this with such grace," I had to stop myself from hurling my phone across the room. But I stayed cool. I knew it would be worth it. The morning of the dinner, I texted everyone in the group chat, including Chase. I told them I wanted to clear the air and explain myself. "I owe everyone an apology tonight," I wrote. "Especially you, Chase." My mom replied first, saying they'd be there, but that I'd better have a damn good explanation. Mallory chimed in with her usual sarcasm, something along the lines of how she hoped I was finally ready to confess. My dad said, "This better be good or don't bother showing up." Chase's reply was short and neutral. A simple thumbs up emoji. Perfect. Everything was falling into place. I spent the day preparing. I loaded the video onto my laptop and double-checked the quality. Just to be safe, I printed out screenshots in case anyone tried to accuse me of faking it. By the time I arrived at my parents' house that evening, I wasn't nervous anymore. I felt like I was walking into battle, and for once I was ready to win. My mom opened the door, looking like she'd already decided I was guilty of everything Mallory had said. "Good," she said as I walked in. "We've been waiting to hear from you. Mallory's been so hurt by all this." I didn't bother responding. I just nodded and walked into the dining room, where the rest of the family was waiting. Dad was at the head of the table, looking serious. Mallory was sitting next to Chase, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She gave me a fake smile, like she'd already won. "We're glad you're here," Mallory said, her tone dripping with condescension. "It takes a lot of courage to admit when you're wrong." I stayed calm. "Thanks for letting me come," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I just thought it was important to talk about everything that's been going on." Staring at Mallory dead in the eye, Dad leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Well, let's hear it. What do you have to say for yourself?" The room was tense, everyone's eyes on me as I took a deep breath and began. "First of all, I want to say that I'm sorry for how things turned out. I know you're all angry with me, and I understand why. But I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I realize there's something I should have said sooner. Something I've been holding back." Mom chimed in, trying to play the mediator. "Jordan, if you've made mistakes, we can forgive you. But you need to own up to what you've done." I completely agree. Everyone deserves the truth. And that's exactly why I wanted this dinner. To lay everything out and make sure there are no more questions. I opened my bag and pulled out my laptop, placing it carefully on the table. Mallory's confident smirk faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice tinged with nervousness. "It means," I said evenly, that it's time everyone sees the full picture. You, Ms. Mallory, spent the last month accusing me of stealing, dragging my name through the mud, and turning this family against me. But tonight, we're putting all the cards on the table. Mom looked confused. Jordan, what are you talking about? I held my laptop and clicked the first video file and turned the screen toward the family. This, I said, is what I've been holding back. The video began to play, showing Mallory pulling into the coffee shop parking lot. Her mystery man was already waiting for her. They embraced, kissed, and walked inside together, looking every bit like a couple. The room went silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Dad leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Chase's expression hardened as he sat up straighter, his jaw clenched. I paused for a moment, letting the gravity of the first video settle over the room. Then I clicked on the next file. And there's more, I said calmly, keeping my focus on Mallory. What is this? Chase asked quietly, his voice tight with anger. Mallory immediately jumped to defense mode. It's not what it looks like, she blurted. That's just a friend. We were catching up, that's all. I didn't say a word, just clicked on the next video. This one showed her leaving the same guy's apartment on a Sunday morning, hugging him goodbye before getting into her car. Chase's face turned crimson. You've been going to his apartment? It's not like that, Mallory insisted, her voice rising. He's just someone I talk to when things get hard. Chase, you're always so busy, and I needed someone to listen. Chase's voice shook with fury. Listen? Are you serious? I've been working nonstop to give you everything you've ever wanted, and this is what you've been doing behind my back? Mom and Dad looked horrified. Mom turned to Mallory, her voice trembling. Mallory, is this true? Have you been cheating on Chase? Mallory was running out of excuses. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stammered, I didn't mean for it to happen. Chase wasn't there for me, and I made a mistake. But that doesn't change what Jordan did. I couldn't hold back any longer. Oh, don't even try to turn this back on me, I said sharply. You lied to everyone and accused me of stealing just to cover your own tracks. You wanted me out of the way so no one would notice what you were doing. Well, guess what? Now everyone knows the truth. Chase's face turned red. He stood abruptly, grabbing his keys. I'm done, he said flatly, his voice cold. We're done. Chase, wait! Mallory cried, running after him. But he didn't even look back. The door slammed behind him, leaving the room in stunned silence. I packed up my laptop and stood to leave. Mom and Dad just sat there, frozen, as the reality of what had just unfolded sank in. Mom finally whispered, Jordan, I don't know what to say. I looked at them both, my voice steady. You don't have to say anything. You've already made it clear whose side you're on. I just wanted to make sure you had the facts before you kept blaming me for everything. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out the door. I'd done what I came to do. Whether they accepted the truth or not didn't matter anymore. Mallory's lies were exposed, and her perfect little facade was crumbling around her. The rest was up to them. Now, the truth was out, Mallory was exposed, and Chase had finally seen her for who she really was. But of course, nothing involving Mallory could ever be that simple. I didn't expect the fallout to start immediately, and the drama that unfolded made everything before it look like a warm-up act. It began the next morning. My phone blew up with texts from extended family members who had somehow already heard bits and pieces of what happened. Mallory must have wasted no time spinning the story to make herself look like the victim. Her version of events painted me as a vindictive brother who'd been waiting for years to ruin her happiness. According to her, I'd followed her around for weeks, secretly recording her to sabotage her marriage. She made me the villain who had destroyed the family. I ignored most of the messages at first, but a few stood out. My aunt, always one to believe the loudest voice in the room, texted me, Jordan, I don't know what's gotten into you, but you should be ashamed of yourself for what you did to Mallory. Family sticks together. Sticks together? That only seemed to apply when Mallory wasn't the one in the wrong. I decided to reply, keeping it short and blunt. Maybe ask her why she's been lying to everyone for months. I'm done taking the blame for her mess. By noon, the family group chat was a war zone. People were either furious at me for ruining Mallory's marriage or demanding answers from her about what they'd heard. My mom chimed in with her usual attempts to control the narrative. This is a private family matter. Let's keep this between us and work through it like adults. Mallory, predictably, stayed quiet in the group chat, probably waiting to see how many people she could still sway to her side before addressing anything. Dad sent me a private message telling me I was being immature for airing the family's dirty laundry, as if I hadn't just spent weeks being accused of theft in front of everyone. Meanwhile, Chase officially moved out of their house. I found out through a mutual friend who said Chase had canceled the trip to the Maldives, packed his stuff, and left Mallory to deal with the fallout on her own. That alone gave me a weird sense of closure. For the first time, someone in my family wasn't blindly defending her. But Mallory wasn't done. A few days later, I woke up to even more chaos. Mallory had apparently reached out to friends and extended family, telling them I'd fabricated the videos and photos. According to her, I'd fabricated everything to make it look worse than it was. She called me obsessed and accused me of stalking her because I was jealous of her success. The accusations were absurd, but some people bought it. I started getting texts and calls from people I hadn't talked to in years, asking me if it was true. Some were genuinely confused, but others were outright hostile. One cousin even texted me, "Dude, why would you go this far just to ruin Mallory? What's your problem?" I didn't bother replying. At that point, I realized there was no winning over certain people. Mallory had spent her whole life perfecting her golden child act, and some people were too deep under her spell to see the truth. But what Mallory didn't count on was Chase stepping in. A week after the dinner, he posted a long message on social media, addressing everything head-on. He explained how he'd found out about her cheating, how the videos and photos were real, and how I'd been dragged into it unfairly. He ended the post with, "Jordan didn't ruin our marriage. Mallory did that all by herself. He just gave me the proof I needed to see the truth." The post went viral among our circle of friends and family. People who had been on the fence started reaching out to apologize to me. Even a few of Mallory's closest allies began distancing themselves from her, realizing that they'd been lied to. Mallory, of course, doubled down. She tried to play the sympathy card, posting vague stories about being betrayed by those closest to you and learning who your true family is. She even hinted at the idea that Chase and I had teamed up against her, which made me laugh considering Chase and I had barely spoken before all this. Then came her boldest and most desperate move yet. Mallory decided to sue me for defamation. Yes, you read that right. She actually filed a lawsuit, claiming that I'd intentionally spread false information to ruin her reputation and cause her emotional distress. When I got served the papers, I couldn't decide whether to laugh or get angry. It was clear she wasn't just grasping at straws, she was trying to intimidate me into backing down. But if she thought I'd fold, she clearly didn't know me at all. I hired a lawyer, showed them everything, and they immediately told me I had nothing to worry about. The evidence was airtight. Everything I'd recorded was in public places, and I had timestamps and witnesses to back it up. The lawsuit was a joke, but it dragged on for weeks, adding more stress to an already exhausting situation. When the court date finally arrived, Mallory showed up with her lawyer, looking smug as ever. But the judge wasn't impressed. My lawyer presented the videos, photos, and even Chase's testimony, which left no room for doubt. Mallory's claims fell apart almost instantly, and the judge dismissed the case, ruling that the evidence was both truthful and relevant. But the real moment of satisfaction came when the judge addressed Mallory directly. This court does not take kindly to baseless accusations and attempts to manipulate the legal system for personal gain. I urge you to reflect on the decisions that led you here today. Mallory left the courtroom humiliated, but the damage to her reputation was already done. Chase had cut ties completely. Most of the family was now on my side, and even her closest friends were keeping their distance. She thought she could destroy me to protect her own secrets, but all she did was expose herself in the process. After the court case, everything went quiet for a while. Mallory disappeared from the family scene entirely. She didn't show up for Sunday dinners, didn't respond in the group chat, and didn't post her usual curated updates on social media. It was like she'd gone underground, probably hoping to avoid the embarrassment of facing everyone who now knew the truth. Chase, on the other hand, reached out to me a couple of weeks after the court hearing. He wanted to thank me again for everything. "You didn't have to do what you did," he said over the phone. "I can't imagine how hard it must have been to deal with all that while she was throwing you under the bus." "It wasn't easy," I admitted, "but I couldn't just let her ruin my life while she got away with everything. I'm glad you finally saw her for who she is." He laughed bitterly. "Yeah, better late than never, I guess." He went on to tell me he'd finalized the separation and was moving into a new place across town. Mallory had been trying to contact him, begging for another chance, but he was done. "I deserve better," he said, and I couldn't agree more. The family, meanwhile, was still figuring out how to handle the fallout. Mom and Dad were embarrassed, though not exactly apologetic. One evening, Dad called me out of the blue. "We've been thinking about everything," he started. "Your mother and I feel terrible about how we treated you. We should have given you the benefit of the doubt." I didn't say anything at first, letting the silence hang. "You think?" I finally said. He sighed. "We made a mistake, Jordan. Mallory had us convinced. You know how she can be." That was their excuse. Mallory had tricked them. Not that they'd failed me as parents or refused to hear my side of things, just that Mallory had been too convincing. It wasn't the heartfelt apology I'd hoped for, but I wasn't surprised. "I appreciate you saying that," I replied. but it's going to take some time for me to trust you again. You didn't just side with her. You threw me under the bus without even giving me a chance to explain. Dad didn't argue. I understand, he said. We just hope we can move past this eventually. I wasn't sure if we could, but I didn't say that. I just told him I'd think about it and hung up. The group chat, once a hotbed of drama, had gone eerily silent. Most people weren't sure what to say anymore. A few family members reached out privately to apologize for believing Mallory's lies, but it felt hollow. They'd all been so quick to turn on me when she pointed the finger. Now that the truth was out, they wanted to sweep it under the rug and pretend everything was fine. One person who didn't reach out was Mallory herself. She stayed completely silent, which was both surprising and unsurprising at the same time. She wasn't the type to apologize, at least not unless it benefited her somehow. I heard through the grapevine that she'd moved out of state, claiming she needed a fresh start. From what little I've gathered, her life hasn't been great since everything fell apart. She lost a lot of friends after the truth came out, and Chase's social media posts made it clear he'd moved on and was living his best life without her. The last update I heard about her was that she was struggling to find steady work. Word had gotten around about the court case, and people were hesitant to trust her. As for me, I've kept my distance from most of the family. Not because I'm holding a grudge, but because I'm done putting myself in situations where people don't have my back. One day, Grandma called me. I just wanted to check in, she said. You've been through a lot lately. Talking to her was a breath of fresh air. She'd always been the one person in the family who saw through Mallory's facade, and it was comforting to know she still believed in me. You did the right thing, Jordan, she said. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for standing up for yourself. Thanks, Grandma, I said. That means a lot. I wish I could say everything went back to normal after that. But the truth is, some things never fully heal. There's still a weird tension whenever I see my parents, and I doubt Mallory and I will ever have a real relationship again. But at the same time, I feel like I've finally stepped out of her shadow. For years, Mallory was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, no matter how badly she messed up. But now, everyone knows the truth. She tried to ruin me, and in the end, she ruined herself. I don't regret what I did. Mallory chose this war, and I made sure she couldn't win it. Mallory might have thought she was untouchable, but the truth has a funny way of catching up to people. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally move forward without her lies hanging over me. Thank you guys for sticking until the end.